Anna Miller left Ohio in 1997 chasing a dream of stardom. Luca Romano built his empire on secrets hidden behind the glamour of fashion, and Marco Venturi uncovered the trail that connected them all. What began as a story of ambition ended in betrayal, murder, and one of Italy's darkest scandals. In 1997, Anna Miller was 19 years old, a small-town girl from Ohio who had grown up with little more than daydreams and magazine clippings. She was quiet, but ambitious, and for years had imagined a life that stretched far beyond her hometown streets. That chance seemed to arrive when a modeling scout stopped her at the local mall, praising her tall frame and sharp features. The scout spoke of Europe, of opportunities, and of Milan, a city where fashion wasn't just a job but a way of life. For Anna, it sounded like the doorway she had been waiting for. Her parents were hesitant, but Anna insisted this was her chance. She promised to call home often, to keep them updated, and to prove that she was strong enough to handle the world. With borrowed money and a suitcase filled with secondhand clothes, she boarded a plane to Italy, determined to chase a dream that so many others only dared to imagine. The excitement was overwhelming as she landed in Milan, a place buzzing with energy and possibility. The first days were dazzling. Billboards covered in luxury brands, glamorous people rushing between castings, and endless cafes filled with models speaking in different languages. It all felt like a movie. Anna was wide-eyed, believing she had finally stepped into the world she belonged in. She shared a small apartment with other hopefuls, young women from Brazil, France, and Eastern Europe, each of them chasing the same promise of fame. They laughed together, but beneath the smiles was competition and whispers of how hard the industry truly was. Anna didn't yet see the shadows hiding behind the bright lights. She believed that with hard work and determination, she would succeed. But her dream was already leading her down a dangerous path. Anna's first months in Milan were filled with castings and endless waiting. She walked from one agency to another, carrying her worn portfolio, always hoping someone would notice her. Sometimes she booked small catalog shoots, but they paid little and barely covered rent. The glamour she had imagined often gave way to exhaustion and self-doubt. Other models moved ahead quickly, while she was told again and again to lose more weight or change her style. The city, so beautiful at first, began to feel cold and unforgiving. It was during one of these low points that Anna met Luca Romano, a well-dressed photographer who seemed to appear everywhere important. He noticed her at a casting and struck up a conversation, offering her encouragement when others dismissed her. Luca spoke with authority, and his connections were undeniable. People greeted him, models sought his approval, and agents seemed to respect him. For Anna, it felt like luck had finally turned in her favor. Luca promised her access to work she could never secure alone. He spoke of international campaigns, private showings, and introductions to people who could change her career. Anna, desperate for a breakthrough, accepted his guidance. Soon, she was attending parties in lavish apartments, surrounded by people she had only seen in magazines. The food, the wine, and the endless attention made her feel as though she had stepped into the life she had once dreamed of back home. Yet beneath the surface, something about Luca unsettled others. Whispers spread among the models about his reputation, stories of girls who had vanished after working closely with him. Anna heard the warnings, but pushed them aside. She was focused only on the future, unaware that her trust in Luca would slowly seal her fate. Luca Romano quickly became the center of Anna's new life. He arranged photo sessions in luxurious studios, where she was treated with more attention than she had ever known. The shoots were professional, but Luca's influence stretched beyond photography. He introduced Anna to designers, agents, and wealthy patrons, always reminding her that success came from being seen in the right places with the right people. To Anna, he seemed like a savior, someone who had chosen her out of countless faces to guide toward greatness. But with every opportunity came a demand. Luca urged her to attend private dinners and exclusive gatherings. These events were not like the crowded castings she was used to. They were dimly lit, filled with expensive suits and jeweled dresses, where older men and powerful women watched the models with calculated interest. The conversations were polite, but the stares lingered too long, and the atmosphere carried an unspoken pressure. Anna often felt uneasy, but Luca reassured her that this was the price of entering the elite circle. As weeks passed, Anna noticed that some of the girls she met at these gatherings would suddenly disappear. A roommate who had once laughed with her at night never returned after a weekend trip arranged by Luca. Another model from Brazil packed quickly and left without a word. Whenever Anna asked, Luca dismissed it as normal. Models moved on, he explained, always chasing better opportunities in Paris, New York, or London. His calm certainty silenced her doubts, even when her instincts told her otherwise. Slowly, Luca's shadow began to stretch over every part of Anna's life. She no longer made decisions without his approval, no longer questioned his invitations. What she didn't realize was that his guidance was not leading her to success. It was pulling her deeper into danger. By the end of 1999, Anna's life in Milan had shifted in unsettling ways. The phone calls home that once came weekly grew infrequent, then stopped altogether. Her parents worried but convinced themselves she was simply busy, swept up in the whirlwind of modeling. The truth was far different. Anna had grown increasingly isolated. Her roommates noticed she spent most nights away, leaving without explanation and returning at odd hours, sometimes looking pale and withdrawn. Her belongings remained untouched in the apartment, a suitcase half-packed but never taken anywhere, as though she had been preparing to leave but never did. By early 2000, Anna vanished completely. She failed to appear at castings, missed rent payments, and never collected the few paychecks still owed to her. Friends left messages that went unanswered, and the modeling agencies that once promised her work offered only vague responses. No one seemed to know where she had gone. Some whispered she had moved to another city. Others believed she had given up and returned to America. But her family in Ohio knew she hadn't come home. Desperate for answers, Anna's parents wrote letters to the consulate, contacted police, and even traveled to Italy, but every lead was frustratingly thin. Authorities treated her disappearance as voluntary, suggesting she might have chosen to walk away from the competitive industry. Yet nothing about her abandoned possessions or her silence fit that explanation. In the apartment she once shared, her bed remained made, her journals left behind on a shelf. The pages spoke of dreams, struggles, and hope, but stopped abruptly, as though her life had been interrupted mid-sentence. For those who cared for her, it was as if Anna had simply been erased, swallowed by the city she thought would make her famous. In the summer of 2001, the quiet unease surrounding Anna's disappearance deepened when another young woman vanished. Her name was Claire Dubois, a 20-year-old from Marseille, France. Like Anna, she had come to Italy chasing a dream of becoming a model. She was vibrant, ambitious, and known for her striking presence on camera. Claire had been seen in Florence attending a fashion showcase, smiling brightly in photographs. But within weeks she too was gone without explanation. Her family's search began immediately, and unlike Anna's case, the French press quickly covered the story. They highlighted Claire's last known movements and her connections to several influential figures in the Italian fashion world. Soon, a troubling detail emerged. Witnesses recalled seeing her leave an event in the company of none other than Luca Romano. He was described as attentive, guiding her through the crowd with the same charm he had once shown Anna. The pattern was difficult to ignore, yet the link between the two women remained unofficial. Italian authorities hesitated to pursue the lead aggressively. Luca's reputation as a celebrated photographer and his connections to wealthy patrons shielded him from serious scrutiny. Any questions about his involvement were quietly pushed aside. To the families left searching, this silence felt like betrayal. Among the models still working in Milan and Florence, whispers spread quickly. Some spoke of fear, others of resignation. A few who had attended Luca's gatherings admitted they had seen Claire there, looking uncomfortable among the older men who seemed to circle her. But no one dared say more. By the end of the year, 2 foreign girls had disappeared under eerily similar circumstances. For those paying attention, the shadow around Luca Romano was growing darker, but still, nothing was done to stop him. By 2003, Anna's name had faded from public memory, but whispers of missing foreign women in Italy continued. Families searched for answers while authorities insisted there was little evidence of foul play. It was in this atmosphere of silence that journalist Marco Venturi began to dig. Marco was not a celebrity reporter. He was known for chasing uncomfortable stories, the kind that others ignored. The trail of vanished women caught his attention because of the patterns he noticed. Most were young, foreign, and linked in some way to the fashion world. Marco built a file filled with newspaper clippings, missing person posters, and agency rosters. He discovered that both Anna Miller and Claire Du Bois had last been connected to Luca Romano. At first, the evidence was circumstantial: sightings at parties, photographs at events, and vague testimonies. But the more he uncovered, the clearer the connection appeared. Behind Luca's polished image of artistic success lay a series of dark coincidences. He reached out to families, including Anna's parents, who were still desperate for answers. They told him about the silence, the unanswered letters, the feeling that nobody cared about their daughter. Their pain fueled Marco's determination. He began publishing small articles in local papers, highlighting the disappearances, though most editors considered it too speculative. The fashion industry, wealthy and influential, resisted anything that might tarnish its image. Still, Marco persisted. He interviewed former models who spoke anonymously, admitting they had seen unsettling things at Luca's private gatherings. Girls who seemed pressured, others who left and never came back. Though none would testify publicly, their accounts added weight to Marco's suspicions. By the end of 2003, he was convinced Luca Romano was at the center of something sinister. But without hard proof, his warnings were ignored, and Luca remained untouchable. In the spring of 2004, a discovery shocked the outskirts of Rome. Construction workers digging near an abandoned property unearthed what appeared to be human remains buried in a shallow grave. Police were called, and forensic teams carefully uncovered the site. What they found was the body of a young woman, her clothing faded and torn, but still intact enough to give clues. A pair of shoes and fragments of jewelry were preserved, items that investigators realized could be matched to photographs taken years earlier. Within weeks, the identity was confirmed through dental records and DNA testing. It was Anna Miller. The revelation stunned both Italy and Anna's home country. For years, her family had lived with the uncertainty of not knowing if she was alive or dead. Now, they had an answer, but it was not the one they had hoped for. News outlets across Europe reported on the case, describing the American girl who had come chasing dreams of fashion, only to be found in a grave thousands of miles from home. The discovery forced authorities to reopen files that had been gathering dust. Investigators began tracing Anna's last known movements, interviewing old acquaintances, and re-examining names that had surfaced before. Time and again, Luca Romano's name appeared. Witnesses recalled Anna leaving with him. Others remembered her attending his exclusive parties. It was no longer just rumor. Her final months pointed directly toward him. The case also stirred fear among families of other missing women, especially Claire Du Bois. If Anna had met such a fate, what had happened to the others? The pressure on law enforcement grew, and Marco Venturi, the journalist who had never let go of the story, finally had proof that his suspicions were justified. Anna's grave was no longer a secret. Her story was about to unravel everything. The discovery of Anna Miller's body triggered a wave of renewed investigation. Detectives began piecing together a timeline that stretched back years, pulling old witness statements and forgotten files. Forensic experts examined items found in the grave, small details that pointed to a struggle. It was no longer possible to dismiss her disappearance as voluntary. What emerged was the chilling truth. Anna had been murdered, and the path to her killer led directly into Italy's fashion underworld. As the inquiry deepened, Luca Romano's carefully constructed image began to crack. His name surfaced repeatedly in phone records linked to Anna and other missing women. Investigators uncovered hotel reservations under his associates, names that matched nights when models vanished. Former assistants came forward, admitting they had been pressured to stay silent about strange late-night meetings and unlisted photo sessions. Each confession added to the picture of a man who had built his success on more than photography. Even more disturbing was the discovery of a hidden network. Wealthy businessmen, foreign investors, and high-profile figures had all attended Luca's private gatherings. Behind the glamour, these events were little more than hunting grounds where vulnerable young women were treated as disposable. Some witnesses claimed they had seen girls escorted away, never to return. The implication was horrifying. Anna's death was not an isolated act, but part of a much larger web of exploitation. Claire Du Bois's disappearance, once seen as unrelated, suddenly made sense in this context. Her last known connection to Luca mirrored Anna's fate, and investigators suspected there were more victims whose names never reached the headlines. Anna's grave had opened a door that could not be closed. What began as a single tragedy was now unraveling into one of Italy's darkest scandals, threatening powerful people who had long believed themselves untouchable. In 2005, the investigation finally closed in on Luca Romano. For months, authorities had quietly gathered evidence, waiting for the right moment to strike. When police raided his luxurious home in Milan, what they found left even seasoned detectives unsettled. Hidden behind locked cabinets and false walls was a disturbing archive. Hundreds of photographs of young women, many of them models who had been reported missing. Some images were staged like professional shoots, but others were candid, taken in vulnerable moments, as if documenting control rather than beauty. Among them were photos of Anna Miller and Claire Dubois, preserved like trophies. The raid also uncovered notebooks filled with dates, initials, and coded references that investigators believed detailed encounters with women connected to his secret network. Bank records revealed unexplained payments from wealthy clients, suggesting that Luca had profited from trafficking young women under the cover of fashion. The glamorous facade he had built for years collapsed overnight, replaced by the image of a predator hiding in plain sight. Luca's arrest dominated headlines across Italy and beyond. The trial that followed was a media spectacle. Families of missing women filled the courtroom, clutching photographs of daughters and sisters who had vanished. Testimony painted a grim picture. Models lured with promises, groomed through parties, and then discarded when they were no longer useful. Witness after witness described Luca's charm masking cruelty, his reputation shielding him from suspicion. Despite his wealth and powerful allies, the evidence was overwhelming. In the end, Luca Romano was convicted of multiple counts of murder and exploitation. The verdict sent shockwaves through the fashion industry, exposing how easily ambition could be twisted into opportunity for predators. For Anna's family, it was justice at last, though no sentence could undo the years of pain. When Anna's body was returned to the United States, her family held a small funeral in their hometown. Friends and neighbors who had once celebrated her departure to Europe now gathered in silence, mourning the life that had been stolen. Her parents, who had waited years for answers, finally laid her to rest, though the grief of knowing how she had suffered remained heavy. For them, the dream their daughter had chased had become a nightmare that could never be undone. In Italy, the case left lasting scars. The trial of Luca Romano forced the fashion world to confront a side of itself it had long ignored. Modeling agencies, once accused of carelessness, faced public criticism for failing to protect vulnerable young women. Journalists uncovered more cases of exploitation hidden beneath the industry's glittering surface. Some agencies were shut down, others tightened their rules, but for many, the damage had already been done. For Marco Venturi, the journalist who had fought to expose the truth, Anna's story became the foundation of his career. He continued investigating similar cases, determined to ensure no other young woman would vanish unnoticed. His articles sparked debates across Europe about the dangers lurking behind promises of fame. Still, he admitted that many questions remained unanswered. There were whispers of other girls whose names were never revealed, of connections that reached higher than even Luca's circle. Though Luca Romano would spend the rest of his life behind bars, the shadow of his crimes lingered. Anna's tragedy became both a warning and a symbol. The cost of blind ambition, the risks of unchecked power, and the vulnerability of those who dare to dream too brightly. Her name, once forgotten, was remembered not for the runway she sought, but for the darkness she unknowingly uncovered.